Okay. So lots of stuff kind of hit at the same time, which is good. I lowered the price a little bit on my circuit boards. It's $55. I lowered it by $10. I just have more time for shipping, so I figured that should appropriately reflect my prices. I'll call it a New Year price. If I wind up with a bunch of side work, then a bunch of freelance work, then I'll cut it back up. But it's really kind of dependent upon my my ability to spend time shipping stuff. So that's just the way it is. It always comes back to labor. You think about like the cost of something and the profit of it and the availability of funds, and all of that is variable. Whatever the currency is, all of that is variable, but the human labor is not. The human labor is the same throughout time. At least that's what it seems to me. Anyways, so I got a Hyperpixel, and if you know Raspberry Pi screens, then you know the Hyperpixel is probably the best quality. I'd kind of been holding off. There's a Raspberry Pi Zero W in there, and those ports are accessible from this side opening. But if you know these screens, they're very good. Little miss on that fit right there, but I'll correct that on the next version, because right now it just friction fits. But the Hyperpixel, awesome. If you haven't gotten one yet, I highly recommend it. It's like, if I'm recalling correctly, it's the same resolution as the 7-inch touchscreen from Element 14, but in a much smaller, nicer package. The whole thing looks nicer. Not to mention the power consumption is a lot lower. I shouldn't say that. It's in my tests, the power consumption is lower. I haven't put it on a multimeter yet, but I can't say exactly how much lower. So that I'm trying to figure out power for it still. I haven't tested out the Power Boost 1000C with it, because the Power Boost 1000C wasn't even close to handling the 7-inch. So the next design I'm going to work on for it, or addition I'm going to put into it, is set up a battery bank, and have that battery bank be a separate double-hinged fold-over, so that you can have, the Hyperpixel, you're looking at it, and then you can take the back of it and fold it over to the front, and that back part is the battery bank itself. And whether that's going to be Hyperpixel or what, or a normal battery bank, or the Power Boost 1000C with a LiPo, I'm not sure yet. I hope the Power Boost can handle it. The voltage stays the same. I don't know if it's dropping, if it doesn't get enough amps or what. I'm going to have to test it, because no one is complaining about the Power Boost 1000C. I also might have shorted mine out. Or damaged mine in some way, because I get brownouts during plugging and unplugging the Power Boost. So mine might be actually damaged, so it might not be an appropriate test. But with the battery bank, I definitely get some some voltage drops when swapping power. So if I plug it in, it's fine, and when it runs, it's fine. But when I unplug it, I get a little bit of a drop. On the smaller battery bank, it voltage drops whenever I plug or unplug. So I mean, functionally, I'll have to, or practically, I'll have to shut it down and then plug it in to charge and then turn it on. And then when I'm ready to unplug it, I'll shut it down and then unplug it. And then once it's unplugged, start it back up. Which is not a huge deal, but, I guess as a test for the form factor, it's a minor annoyance, but at least it'll give me an idea of how it actually is to carry one of these. But I mean, so far it's great. I mean, it was the first one that I fired up the screen and it loaded into Raspbian, and I was like, wow. And I can actually, it has a capacitive touch, so it actually feels good to use. I'm figuring out some of the software. The Matchbox keyboard kind of sucks, but it works, and it needs a little bit of tweaking to get it just right. Also, for whatever reason, it loads at the top of the screen. I don't know if that's just some bug with Raspbian. I haven't really looked into it though, so maybe that's just me. So that happened. So that's the Hyperpixel. I also got the I forget what I'm calling them. The translator board, interlocutor. I guess I've just been calling it the adapter board. It's the board that fits over, fits in this area of the board and plugs into the MCU and makes an adapter so that you can put an ESP32 board on top of it and run some heavier code, heavier than an ATmega32U4 at least. So the ESP32 is pretty overbuilt for a it's kind of overkill for a keyboard chip or keyboard brains, but overbuilt is okay. I mean, I was thinking about doing well, I still kind of have plans for it, but I was going to do an Arduino Due, a 32-bit ARM processor for your keyboard. So the ESP32 that's me with some restraint. To have some code, I'll be able to work on it much more easily once I have that adapter all wired up, because then I can just pull out the brains and then pop it in that board and then go ahead and develop for it. That was the problem before. So anytime I wanted to develop for it, I had these the jumper wires, which is what is it called? Apparently someone called it jumper jerky, and I thought that was hilarious. Although I think rainbow bacon is much more apt. So I couldn't really troubleshoot because I wasn't sure if the jumpers weren't quite reaching or some of the connections weren't that good. So with this, everything will be solid, and I'll be able to really develop that firmware. The original plan was to open source it, and I still might do that, but I'm kind of on a, I don't want to say, it's probably a spiral. If I don't want to say spiral, it's probably a spiral. I'm spiraling about open source a little bit. It's just not a great place to be. I mean, logically it makes sense. Socially, I guess it makes sense. It makes sense to help other people and to spur them on. But I think what it needs to be is, maybe that's it, like a 80% lower or something. I made so I made that ESP32 Wi-Fi LoRa board with a little push button, so a little hand computer. And when I made that, I was messing around with it, and when I made those circuit boards, yeah, okay, sleep is sleep. All right, remember when I made those 3 circuit boards? Well, those arrived. The adapter board is there. I made some mistakes on the ATmega 32U or 320 ATmega 328 PPU connections. I made some mistakes on that one. And like as soon as I opened KiCad, I was like, what's wrong here? What's wrong with this? So I fixed those, so there will be a version 2 for that actually supports it. But that wasn't technically necessary for what I'm doing, so the ESP32 portion should work just fine. And it'll function as a breakout board, so I can actually connect it to, I'll have like a piece that I can connect, and then wires can run to, like that Arduino Due. So it has multifunction. I mean, that was what I designed it for. So even though one of those bits is broken, it still can do other things. but still can do 2 other things, so it's still useful. But on that 32 ESP32 little hand computer thing that I was messing around with, that thing wound up having, I free-handed the buttons. I told you I did these in like a few hours, all 3 of them. So there are some fiddly bits, but the hand computer, the button footprints are a very tight fit. So I was trying to figure out how to do it because I didn't want to just throw them out. I was like, I waited a long time for these. I would really like to be able to use them, and I realized that if I take all the buttons, 50 or 48 50 buttons. If I take all 50 buttons, I take all 4 legs, I extend them out, and then I cut off the diagonal ones. Then I can mount it at a slight angle and then plug it in, no problem. So it was just tedious work. But once you do the tedious work, everything assembles after that. So I was thinking about that while I was actively spiraling about open source software, and I think the work is what it is. And I think the answer is like 80% lowers for software. Some assembly required. You know, you still have to. I'm not giving away the store, but I'm helping you get there. Like 50% of the way, 75% of the way, 80% of the way. So if you're willing to put in the work, then yeah, I'd be happy to open source this board. But when everything's super simple and it's plug and play, and this is the other thing, script kiddies. If you're just a script kiddie and you don't really understand what's going on, it's like, what do you want from me? Like, what are you really trying to get? The other thing is, it's like the thing about open sourcing the board is like I have about 8 hours. I think it's 8 hours of live streams showing how to build a Signum circuit board. And if you don't want to put 8 hours into it, then like I don't know what to tell you. Well, I do know what to tell you. Then like tough. I mean, I put a lot of work. Again, labor. It comes back to labor. It's man hours. This is the labor that I put into it. Is that labor? Does that labor have value to you? Okay. Well, then, like, respect it by, to me, either buying from me or putting your own labor into it to finalize something, or finalize a project or a product or something like that. So I don't know. I'm still thinking about all this. It's weird, and also I'm really tired. So okay, bye.